Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Monday, May the 5th, 2025. And oh my, what a weekend of boxing. I don't even know really where to start. Actually, I do know where to start. Let's go back in history on what happened on this day when boxing was great and fighters actually turned up and tried to entertain and earn their massive paychecks. All right, back in 1986, Mexico's Rene Arredondo won the WBC super lightweight title, knocking out American Lonnie Smith. 2007, talk about when boxing was great. Floyd Mayweather defeated Oscar De La Hoya on points in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand for the World Super Welterweight Championship. Also on this day in 2012, Canelo Alvarez defeated Sugar Shane Mosley on points with the WBC 154-pound title at stake. That was also at the MGM Grand. And on the same card, Floyd Mayweather again defeated Miguel Cotto for the WBC 147-pound title. And that's, as I said, when boxing was great. I don't know what the hell we just seen over the weekend. Yesterday's fight with Canelo and William School. They kept calling him School all day, so I'm going to call him School, even though I'd like to call him Skull, because that's what he was. He was a numbskull yesterday, but his name is School. And what a ridiculous fight it was, with Canelo beating him over 12 rounds and setting some unwanted records. I don't know, am I being too harsh here? It was probably one of the worst fights I've ever seen. I'm not putting all the blame here on William School either. I'm putting just as much blame on Canelo Alvarez, who was resigned to the fact after probably the first round, I'm talking probably even halfway through the first round, that this was going to the scorecards. He was going to do as minimal as possible just to get the win. And in my opinion, rob the fight fans of what they pay their hard-earned to watch. And I probably blame Canelo more than I blame William School. Because William School threw more punches. Yeah, he was on his bike, I get that. He was running away, and I know he wasn't doing anything, but Canelo Alvarez didn't even attempt to cut the ring off, didn't attempt to throw more than one punch at a time, didn't attempt to up the pace at any stage, to the point where he threw, what was it? This is where the records come in, by the way. He threw 152 punches for the entire 12-round fight. That is between 12 and 13 punches a round. Yes, just under 13 punches a round. Put that in perspective. 4 punches a minute. 4 to 5 punches a minute. That's it. A punch every, 15 seconds. 1 punch every 15 seconds. I hope I got the maths right enough. But you get where I'm coming from here. And I know William School, like all the opponents, or recent opponents of Canelo Alvarez, realised he couldn't win from the first bell, or thought he couldn't win, by the way. How do they know they don't even try? He, from the first bell, did nothing. I thought probably a little bit like what was the fight the other day? Well, all 3 fights actually, where you went through the first round, you went through the second round, you went through the third round, and maybe even through the 4th round. And like, wow, well, they're just warming up, they're getting into it. You know, School, is a big guy, and Canelo's just sort of feeling him out, and that's what good fighters do. They poke and prod their opponents and sort of get an idea of what they're capable of, and then they drop the boom and pick up the pace. And Williams School, on the other hand, come here, man. Williams School, on the other hand, look, he was obviously very, very conscious of Canelo, like they all seem to be, and just pretty much shut up shop from the first bell as well. Didn't even try and win the fight. Now, having said that, the commentators throughout the fight were ridiculously atrocious. They were just pretty much blaming it all on Williams School, saying he hadn't won a round. I remember thinking during the fight, hey, this is Canelo, well, geez, is he winning just by pure aggression, if you can call it that? They were saying he's just winning every round and School's not even in. I was thinking, well, what the hell is Canelo doing in the same sort of basis? School is not doing anything, but at least he's moving, at least he's throwing punches, at least he's doing something. Canelo literally did nothing. And as I said, for the first 3, 4, even 5 rounds, it's like, all right, well, he's just maybe carrying School, and he'll give the fans an entertaining stoppage later in the fight, or at least try and pick it up. He did not change his game plan from the first round until the last round. A lead hook, a lead rip, a lead overhand right. Did he throw a jab? Didn't see many. And that was it for 12 rounds. And as I said, even School, at least he tried to move and box. He was trying to, I don't know, was he trying to showboat a little bit? I don't know. But what he was doing, at least he knew he wasn't winning the fight. Well, maybe he did, I don't know. But I blame Canelo more than I blame Williams School. Because Williams School is a limited fighter, a fringe fighter. I get that Canelo wanted to fight him because he wanted that IBF belt back. But we knew what we were going to get with Williams School. We knew he was limited, and we knew that he was probably going to get on his bike with that Cuban style they all talk about, which is great in the amateurs, but bloody boring in the pros. And Canelo did zero, nothing to try and change course of the fight. Now, change the course of the fight. Now, afterwards, he did say that, I don't like fighting these guys and all this sort of, but first of all, you did choose him, by the way. I get it. It was for the IBF belt. But you don't like fighting him. Well, you were resigned to the fact the fight was going to go the distance halfway through the first round and didn't even attempt to change things up. So I am, you can probably tell, filthy on the fight and filthy on the whole occasion. I'm just looking at I'm filthy on the whole weekend. Now, I'm going to probably upset a few people here. I'm going to get a few people offside with my opinion here. But hear me out and you can say whatever you want, okay? The whole Turkey Al Sheikh Riyadh season thing, I'm off it. I'm off. And before you say, what are you on, Lyndon? He's got bringing all this money, all this prestige, all the big fights are getting made. How could you possibly say that? Well, I'm saying it because I think as good as we all say boxing is travelling at the moment, I disagree, and I think Turkey Al Sheikh and Riyadh, the whole Riyadh season thing is behind it. This is the reason why. And I know you're saying all the big fights are getting made, Lyndon. How could you say it? All the cards he's putting on, all the money they're getting paid. Do we really think that boxing would just stop to a screeching halt if he wasn't involved? This sport has survived for 150 years, whatever it's been. I don't know. What was it? It probably, let's say, at least the turn of the century, last century, that is. It survived. All the big fights, probably 95% of the biggest fights that could ever be made have been made. And it's like we've almost become these fanboys that the Eddie Hearns and Oscar De La Hoyas and all these promoters and all the fighters out there that have just got on their knees and just bowed down to a man who they think without him the sport could not survive. And it's pathetic the way they pander to him. It's pathetic how they just literally drool over him, kiss his ring, whatever you might want to call it. And I don't like it. I'm done with it. And as I said, do you really think the biggest fights in history wouldn't have been made at some stage? Hey, we managed to get Ali Fraser. We managed to get Ali Foreman. We managed to get Hagler Leonard. We managed to get Tyson Spinks. We managed to get Mayweather Pacquiao after everything that'd gone on for 6 or 7 years. It still happened. Big fights get made. We got Mayweather and Pacquiao. Look at all I'm just going through them every day. Probably this week there'll be these big Cinco de Mayo cards. We got all those fights. We had Pacquiao, we had Mayweather, we had De La Hoya, we had Canelo, all in massive fights every single year. We had the big heavyweight fights. Yeah, there was that lull when the Klitschko's were around, but whatever, I'm talking about history. Lewis Holyfield, Tyson. All those fights got made. Now, this mentality that without Turki Al-Sheikh involved, the whole sport will just stop and shut down and that'll be it for boxing. Come on, guys. And to be honest with you, as good as these so-called cards have been and the greatest cards of all time, I dispute that ferociously. Look back in the history. There's always a promoter that comes through. It used to be we had a couple of them, Don King, Bob Arum. Some of the greatest fights, the greatest cards we've ever seen. And yeah, okay, maybe in the last few years before His Excellency came around that, you know, maybe it was a little bit lackluster, but geez, at the same time, Canelo was still in 2 big fights a year. We still had Crawford. We probably on the back end of, you know, Mayweather and Pacquiao and these types of guys. We had big fights. It's not like we hadn't had big fights for decades before Turki Al-Sheikh came around. But now what I'm seeing is, and I don't like it, this reliance on him to get the fights done. All the other promoters have just gotten lazy. No one's doing anything. They're all just waiting for His Excellency to come around, and you can see the look on his face now. His whole demeanour has changed. Mission accomplished. He is officially the man. Well done, Your Excellency. You are the man. And he walks in, or does he more like strut into the ring now and pushes people aside and takes centre stage and tells people to be quiet in the arena because he's got something to say and rolls out his belts that who gives a toss. I'm just past the whole money thing. It's all about the money, and I get it for these big money fights. But what has that big money brought? Look what we got over the weekend. Not one stoppage or knockout throughout the whole weekend. Pathetic fights, the main fights I'm talking about. Absolutely pathetic. And I watched a little bit of Oscar De La Hoya this morning. He was embarrassed by the whole thing and critical, and trying his best probably not to be critical at Turki Al-Sheikh about the whole thing. But when you give all these guys this money, what has it achieved? The fights were garbage. Yeah, the fights took place and I'm sure they got well paid and more than what any other promoter could afford to pay them. But the event was crap. Times Square, all the fans hated it. And then yesterday, Canelo, look, let's just look at the Canelo fight yesterday. Look again what this money and these supposed big fights overseas has done. Yesterday, it's Cinco de Mayo weekend. Canelo Alvarez fighting in the main event. And don't even worry about who's in the opposite corner. It's Canelo Alvarez. Doesn't matter. It could be fighting anyone off the street. Doesn't matter. This is Canelo Alvarez, Cinco de Mayo weekend. I've been to these events in Las Vegas and they are massive. The atmosphere is electric. And again, it doesn't matter who's in the opposite corner. It is Canelo Alvarez. Mexican fans going nuts. The whole town is just buzzing. And yesterday we get this stale room of no action. I know the fight was shit, so it doesn't matter. I know probably, but it wouldn't have mattered. We've had some really good fights on some of those cards and the same thing applies. Dull, sterile arena with no atmosphere, with a handful of Mexicans in the crowd trying to get excited. It actually looked a bit cringe. The Mexican fans trying to get excited about the whole thing. And Cinco de Mayo at 6 o'clock in the friggin' morning, by the way. So that's just my opinion on the whole thing. If this is what's gonna happen with Turki Al-Sheikh running boxing and putting all this money into it, then that's me out. Of course, I'll still watch the fights. I'm a boxing fan. I'm a boxing treasure. I can't help myself. But if we're not going to get or if we might not get as many of these big fights and big cards, go, mate, how you doing? And in return, we're going to go back to Las Vegas. We're going to go back to New York. We're going to go, well, not New York, back to Madison Square Garden, Barclays Center, wherever. Not the streets of Times Square. But we're going back to Vegas. We're going back to LA, the Inglewood Forum. We're going back to those traditional places, and we're going to put these big shows on, and he can keep his money. That's where I feel at the moment. He can keep his money, keep his little power trip that he's on at the moment, his fanboy fantasy, whatever he's doing at the moment, with just getting what he wants because of money. And this is where we got to. And don't get me wrong, I understand the fighters deserve to be paid. They deserve to be looked after, but look what we got over the weekend. These fighters were so well paid, it was ridiculous. Do they get scared to risk everything because of what might happen? They're scared to lose because they might be off the turkey train. I don't know, but I don't know. Just take me back to before this whole thing. And look, when it first started with Turkey Al Sheikh, it was okay, it was good. We did get some big fights, but we also had the mix of Las Vegas. We had the mix of New York. We had the mix of we had Wembley Stadium. We had all the mix of all the different big sites, and it sort of meshed in with this. But now it's like, unless it's over in Saudi Arabia, it's not a big fight. It's not a big card. And I don't like it. I'm done with it. And as I said, yeah, he's bringing money, prestige, but at what cost? The sport, this is just my opinion, by the way, but the sport, to me, is not in the best state it's ever been in. Because as I said before, yeah, the big fights are getting made, but guess what? The fights always get made. They might take a little bit longer. There might be a lot more negotiating. There might be a lot more, give and take that has to happen, and a lot of rooting around like we saw with Mayweather and Pacquiao. I get that. But the fights get made eventually. Well, most of them. And there's only a handful of fights in history that I can think of, great heavyweights, and not just good fights. I'm talking about the super fights, the stars against each other. I tell you what, you could probably count on one hand the super fights that never got made on one hand. You could, and maybe that's even stretching it. Because either way, the fights get made, and I just don't like it at the moment where everyone's just lazy now. The fighters are lazy. The promoters are lazy. It's all just relying on Turkey Al Sheikh, and it's okay, Turkey will fix everything. And I'm almost hoping that this TKO thing with Turkey Al Sheikh and Dana White, well, who knows whether it'll work or whether it won't, but I'm almost hoping that Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya say, you know what, you go off with your best buddy, Dana White, and do your thing, and we're going to do our thing. We're going to get back to being active, aggressive, exciting promoters and getting behind our guys and not relying on Turkey Al Sheikh to put food on the table. And how much more money is it that he's actually paying? Obviously it's significant, but still, boxers are so well paid at the top level. And how do we know what the undercard fighters are getting paid? I'm sure they're getting paid more, but again, what has the undercards delivered? Everyone talks about these great cards, the best cards in history. Well, okay, I beg to differ. And even though there has been some fights that have been made, some good fights on those cards that have been made, it might not have been made, or at least at the time, or how quickly they were made. Maybe that's the case. But look at the fights that did happen. Can you remember a real barn-burning fight on one of those cards where the crowd is up and about, it's electric, and it's just going nuts, and the atmosphere is just out of control, and the fight's out of control? I don't. We've had some good matchups, but there's not really any fights I can think of that look back memorably and go, oh, what a fight that was, and the atmosphere, and oh, it was just awesome. I can't remember any. And then in the meantime, we get Turkey Al Sheikh. He gets up. You can almost hear a pin drop when he gets in the ring because everyone's got to be quiet. And he, like yesterday with Canelo and Crawford in the ring, that was cringeworthy as well. With his belt, okay, yes, Turkey, we're impressed. You've got all the money in the world, and that's a great belt. I don't give a shit. Now, the one good thing he's done with this is take Canelo and Crawford to Las Vegas, which will be great. But then the whole of Las Vegas is going to have to roll out the red carpet to Turkey and all his cronies and, pay the homage to him and all this bullshit. I'm just done. As I said, guys, I know there's a lot of you out there that will differ with my opinion. I understand that. But after the weekend, and I know it's just might have just been one of those weekends where all the fights were just shit. And no one really tried to win. No one really tried to entertain. No one tried to take any risks. And it was just a shit weekend of boxing. I get it. But I tell you what, I just hope it's not a trend now going forward of what we're going to see. And again, all this card aside on the weekend, I've been thinking about this for a little while, just thinking, I have commented on here a couple of times about it. Where's the soul of boxing gone? Where's the soul? Where's the spirit of boxing? It's like, at the moment, it's like, well, we can't really do anything because we've got to wait for Turki Al-Sheikh to agree to it and get the balls moving, and we can't possibly try and negotiate a fight between ourselves because we can't give as much money as what Turki Al-Sheikh's gonna give. So he's literally got this sport held to ransom at the moment, and I don't like it. Now, it'd be different. I've got no dramas if it was like a UFC type of thing where the person running it is not only putting on great shows, but they put them in great locations and they pack the arena with fans, and it's electric. Those UFC events are just crazy. I don't mind that, but at the moment we've got a similar situation with one man who's running the sport, with little minions underneath him with Oscar and Eddie, and the shows are dull. They're lifeless. And as I said before, I just wish Eddie and Oscar would say, you know what, Turki, you go off with your best mate Dana and do your TKO thing. We're going to go back to doing what we do and maybe working together. I saw an interview with them over the weekend, and it's good to see they're getting along now because we need them to get along. Very, very like-minded. You know, in their own way, they divide people, but they also excite people. The way you watch them getting interviewed, you know, they've both got this aura about them. And how good would it be? This is just my opinion, by the way. How good would it be if they said, "You go off and have your fun with Dana White and do your thing. We're going to get rolling and do our own thing." Because I can tell you, I would 100% back Oscar and Eddie working in conjunction together than I would with Turki Al-Sheikh and Dana White, and take away the money side of things. All right, the sound like a scolding parent, don't I? All right, so but just what those two could achieve, and look, the way they reacted to when Turki and Dana announced his TKO thing, you probably get the feeling that both of them know that maybe this is going to be the situation going forward. But how good would it be to have those two guys unite and do their own thing? Because I understand the money thing is great, but do you really think fighters want to go to Saudi Arabia and fight at freaking 6 o'clock in the morning? And even when they do it on those other shows, they're fighting at 2 or 3 in the morning in front of lifeless crowds. You know, and all the rich bloody Saudis in the front row and the VIPs. There's no real fans there. Is the money that significant that you would just forego what makes boxing great to go to a lifeless country in a lifeless stadium and just fight just purely for the money? And I know it's a prize fighting, and a lot of you will say, well, yes, they will do exactly that. But how significant is the extra money? I'd like to know. But the fact that Eddie and Oscar didn't seem too worried about the whole TKO thing suggests that, yeah, you know, and how well they're getting on at the moment. Wouldn't it be great to see them just, again, work together and give us fans an alternative? Because at the moment, I'm not liking this monopoly that Turki Al-Sheikh has. And as I said, it'd be different if he was putting on great, exciting shows, but he's just not. And that shows over the weekend were absolute garbage. And not only with Turki Al-Sheikh and my dirty on, but also the fighters. Teofimo Lopez is the only fighter that actually tried to do something over the weekend. Were all the fighters, given something before they fought? I don't know. They all seemed to be on the same sort of thing, didn't they? Come here, mate. Come on, get out there. There you go. Come on, buddy. So anyway, I've had my say on my soapbox, and look, a lot of you will disagree. A lot of you will say that he's so good for boxing. But I'd like to be convinced, money aside, what Turki Al-Sheikh is really bringing to the sport, because I'll just go over it again. I don't buy that it's the best cards of all time. You got short memories if that's the case. There's been some great cards over the time. I don't buy that it's just him or nobody, or without him the big fights don't get made, because they do get made. And I don't know, maybe I'm sort of showing my age here, but if this is the new age and what we can expect going forward, yeah, it's not for me. I'll happily watch YouTube videos of all the great fights in history, and and relive my youth that way. But anyway, guys, give us your thoughts. Am I overreacting? Is Turki Al-Sheikh really the answer to everything? Do we really need him to, you know, to be big brother in boxing these days? Without him, does boxing fall over? Because I just 100% don't think so. Give me your thoughts. Hope you have a great day. We'll catch you tomorrow.